Yes, hello. Welcome everyone. We are 1 minute before starting our today's skybow webinar about the future of no-code and low-code solutions with SharePoint. My name is Adis Jugo, and today with me, I would dare say almost as always, Matt Walter. Hi, Matt.
Yeah, hi Adis. For me today it's an easy one. It's your session today, so I can lean back and just enjoy. So
Yeah, get yourself a coffee or something. Okay, we see that the attendees are quickly jumping in right now in the webinar as we see. We have for the end of this week, it's a carnival week in Germany, by the way. We have for this carnival day, for the carnival week in Germany, a relatively easy topic moreover, we talk about no-code and low-code solutions, which are with us since long time now, but are quickly coming into attention for the past 1-2 years again. So we just wanted to go slowly through this topic. Matt is going to take the questions, and we are going to answer the questions on the end of the webinar. And to try, feel free to ask the questions, discuss, disagree if you need, and we are going to address those questions at the end of the day. So Matt, should we start?
yeah, sure. Let's go on.
Let's go.
Cool.
So, just shortly about me, my name is Adis Jugo. I'm working for skybow as a director of product technology, which means I'm quite involved in the development of our products and quite involved in working with our partners on implementation of our product. I'm in SharePoint world since almost very beginning. I actually skipped the version 2001. What I heard later, it was actually a good thing to skip. I'm Microsoft MVP for Office Servers and Services. This is the old SharePoint, Microsoft MVP for SharePoint competency. And since I'm coming from a development forward, I'm also a Microsoft MVP for SharePoint for Office development. This is my private website, and this is my Twitter account. You can always contact Skybow at www.skybow.com. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to target what are no-code and low-code solutions, what are we talking about already, who are citizen developers. This is kind of a new buzzword, we could tell, and why are they important suddenly, why does it all suddenly matters? What are the dangers of citizen developers and how to mitigate those dangers, how to deal with all that? What's the role of IT? That's maybe a central question in this whole area, and maybe the central question of this webinar probably. What does that all mean in SharePoint world? Because we know there's always some parallel things happening in SharePoint, some special things happening in SharePoint, and we'll take a look at the choices which are to be, which you can make in whole this thing. So citizen developer. If you think that it's a newly created buzzword for this webinar, I need to disappoint you. Citizen developer came into an IT glossary, which is maintained by Gartner, with a definition is a user who creates new business applications for consumption by others using development and runtime environments sanctioned by corporate IT. So we see a few things now. It's a user. It's not a professional developer. It's a user, but who creates applications for consumption by others. So not for his own use, like some Excel sheets or whatever, but for consumption by others and sanctioned by corporate IT. So we see three really important things here. User, they can build a department, enterprise, or even public applications using those techniques as we see by this definition. And if you think this is just a Gartner definition, I say think twice, because yeah, those are three buzzwords which I thought. It's a business applications, it's for consumption by others, they're usually hosted in the clouds. But we see that we have here from Forbes, citizen developers, low code is new enterprise class. Citizen developers are ready to fill the gaps in enterprise applications. This is from Tech Republic. And from ReadWrite, why citizen developers are future programming. All those articles and many more on the internet, if you just Google for citizen developers and low code, you will find like hundreds of similar articles. I just took some of the most prominent sources here, as you see. All those are articles published in the past 1, 2, 3 years. So we see that this rise of citizen developers which has a business problem. Usually solving this business problem means that the user needs to have a software which would help him to solve this business problem, to solve that need. And that would mean acquiring that kind of software on one or another way. So our user needs software. The first thing our user does, it goes to CIO. So I'm using a bit of funny pejorative word here for CIO, Chief Infrastructure Officer, which I actually heard of one of my customers 2 years ago, which told me our CIO is not anymore Chief Information Officer, but he became our Chief Infrastructure Officer. What means that the business departments are actually starting to see CIOs and IT departments as someone who maintains infrastructure. In perception of the IT department, overwhelmingly became those that IT departments are not solving the problems anymore, but they're actually creating some, and that they are self-serving by just moving the computer box back and forth. So when our user comes to CIO, in this, of course, a bit black and white painted word, but very often answer is no. And this no usually comes from the few different arguments: compliance, governance, alignment, risk. This application that our new user wants needs to be compliant, needs to be properly governed, needs to be aligned with the rest of the IT stack in the company, and the risk mitigation needs to be in place. All those 4 words from our CIO are actually very legitimate words. But the problem for our user is not solved. Our user still needs this piece of software. So what our user does? Our user either buys the software. There's something we call now power of a credit card. In today's cloud, you can buy software, single task purpose software for almost everything. Or our user will go in own custom development. The thing is, both those ways exclude CIO. If our user, which can be now the representative of business department, buys a software with business department credit card, it does include IT. If they go in own development without IT, with citizen development tools, this is also excluding the IT. So this is the situation that cannot be satisfactory for anybody. IT very often forgets that business matters. IT does not matter. We all who work in IT, we are just a service for businesses. Businesses are those doing business. And a secret is, if in a false competition between business and IT, business always wins. IT never wins in those kind of potential conflicts, which we actually see more and more happening at those times. So those are literally 2 sentences I heard from the customers. Quoted one-to-one, which is, we are the ones with the budget. So we are the ones who have money. And if IT cannot deliver, we will go around them. So those are those both ways. The businesses, our users, they do have power, they do have possibility to acquire software independently of the IT department. Because modern software does not need does not really need to be hosted in the data centers anymore. So that's the reason how we are getting Dropbox, Box, Evernote, Trello, and similar cloud services sneaked into the companies today. And here we are in the middle of something we call shadow IT or rogue IT. And this is probably the most prominent problem in the IT world today, shadow and rogue IT. I had, in one of the conferences I was speaking 2 years ago, I had a very enthusiastic, nice young lady in the audience telling me how proud she was that she actually introduced Trello to her team. Trello is a project management software. And how she overcame all those burdens of project server and all the policies, and she just got her team engaged and productive and fast going. What she did not realize, she was actually putting sensitive corporate data and customer data to a third-party service which wasn't sanctioned by her company. And by doing that, even by getting her team, and that's one side of the medal, by getting her team productive and engaged, she was on the same side, in the same time, on another side of the medal, she was breaching she was breaking few important rules and making few breaches in the corporate policies. So this is the thing we need somehow to mitigate and to somehow to come together in this important question. And if you think it's only, really, it's happening only with some dodgy cloud services where nobody really cares about Trello, about Evernote, think about this. This is, if you start Microsoft Power Apps, one of the new shiny tools from Microsoft, and you start to create your Power App, those are the data sources you get offered from the screen one. And you see in Power Apps that besides things like Office 365 and SharePoint and I don't know, Microsoft SQL Server and Dynamics CRM, you see here things like Salesforce, which is okay, but you see things like Slack, like Twilio, like Trello, like MailChimp, Google Drive, Dropbox. Even more, the first demo that Microsoft published about Power Apps in their Channel 9 video was a demo about one of the Microsoft execs storing data in Excel file in Dropbox and making a Power App around that. Well, most of at least European but also US large companies, when they see that scenario, they will say, hey, this is not what we do. We don't put any sensitive data in Excel sheets or a Dropbox, or a public Dropbox. So the problem is there. And the problem is, it's not only some rogue or dodgy services, it's that a lot of major companies, including Microsoft, but also including Google, including Amazon, whatever, do, let's say, encourage users to use also rogue data source along or on the same side as the official and sanctioned data sources. So to summarize this part of the presentation, the citizen developers identify existing sources or create new sources of data. Think about this Excel sheet in Dropbox, and use available citizen development techniques and products and platforms to create a solution. Whatever the platform technique might be, this is exactly the process which is happening. And this is the process that IT needs to support, because this process cannot possibly be shut down. So what IT needs to do is actually to support and to empower users to do this properly, and not on the rogue way which creates rogue IT. Another myth which we have, that it's a new phenomenon. It is actually not. For all of us who have 4 or more in the number of the years in the ID, we remember in the 80s and 90s how business departments created without IT departments, from the simple reasons most of the companies did not have IT departments back then. So how business departments created a lot of Clipper, Fox Pro, the Base 3, or however they were called, applications for their departments. This is how first ERP softwares were created, basically. This is how the first software came to being. And on the end of the 80s and especially in the 90s, we had the situation in the IT landscape in the companies. There were a lot of rogue Clipper, Fox Pro, and similar applications floating around departments where the people, where the things were being done. In 90s, we came kind of to a consolidation level where we said, okay, where enterprises were getting standardized ERP systems and similar stuff. But in those 90s, we had Microsoft Access, which immediately gained rocketly gained huge success into creating rogue applications. And dirty secret is even now in 2017 there are like literally thousands of access, or hundreds of thousands actually, access databases being exchanged by file shares or by email, which solve simple business tasks and solve simple business problems. This is exactly what Access was and still is all about. Something we don't like to talk about, but SharePoint, which came in 2000s, was a platform for rogue solutions itself. I mean, creating lists and libraries. If you have contribute rights or design rights in SharePoint, there's nothing easier than to create a new list and to start entering data on it. If this data is governed, managed, backed up, who knows? That developed a special nightmare with InfoPath and SharePoint Designer. Whoever was in SharePoint time knows how this all ended up and what kind of nightmares and headaches this has caused. Microsoft then tried in 2010 to move something to something called Access Services in SharePoint, but that never really took off. Access Services were never really widely accepted in the world of SharePoint. Of course, we have an evergreen, Microsoft Excel. I have seen very large Excel sheets solving very complex business problems by people who are not developers. So there's a huge amount of data, valuable data hidden in different huge Excel sheets. And since 2016, 2017, we have seen from Microsoft coming Power Apps, which are Microsoft highway for citizen developers, but also highway to shadow IT. This short look in the history shows us that there is a real need for citizen developer apps. There's a need for citizen developers. What evolves is technology. We started with Clipper in the 80s. We are now somewhere with Power Apps in 2016, 2017. But the problem, the cause of the problem and the solution for the problem did not basically change in these 30 years. Yeah, so this is our shadow IT guy, which reminds me that we still need to ask these four main questions. What about compliance? What about governance? What about alignment with the rest of the software stack, with the rest of the IT stack? And what about risk with those citizen developer apps which we have? So if we have our user and our IT, our CIO, basically we need the role of IT service, of our CIO is to make this application secure. We speak about security here. To apply all the standards and guidelines to those applications as you would apply to any other software used in the company, to apply IT governance, to apply data governance, and to apply compliance and risk procedures which are necessary. We are going to come to all those 5 points in a few minutes, but this is the role where IT then again needs to support and to back businesses, departments, citizen developers in creating those solutions. So it's okay for citizen developers to create those solutions, but there also must be a process, a whole the whole IT core in the background helping the citizen developers to do it right, to do it properly. So this is actually a schema which I borrowed from Gartner. I found it a very good schema actually how this all works. The whole process starts right here with the citizen developer and his business problem. So citizen developer sees a need for software and seeks for a solution for this business problem. That's where she or he gets an app idea. Okay, I know how I want to do that. In the next step, he will or she will recognize all the data sources or identify all the data sources they need. Sometimes we have Excel data, sometimes we have databases, sometimes we have public APIs, whatever that might be, but those are different data sources which our citizen developer wants to mesh into an application. The next step is really building this application, and this is something we call low-code app development. And on this step, this is somewhere where IT needs to step in. Because on the end of the day, the IT are those guys who will have to support this. So if something is wrong with that application, if there's a security breach or whatever happens with this application, IT is still going to be held responsible because that's their job. And this is where IT needs to jump in to make the app secure, to apply standards and guidelines, to ensure support, and to ensure governance. After that, and only after that, can this app be published for use inside the enterprise or even publicly. And then the whole procedure goes around for the changes. So what we see that IT needs to do is 5 major tasks. Is to enable security, is to follow standards and guidelines, to apply IT governance and data governance, and the compliance and risk procedures. So when we speak about enabling security, now we are going to those 5 tasks. It's protection from data breaches. Let's say we know that Dropbox had a data breach 2-3 years ago, so Dropbox would probably not, one of the policies will be don't store your data on Dropbox. But even if Dropbox would have not been breached, what happens if a user who created the app leaves the company? And that was his private Dropbox or her private Dropbox. So this is something that security needs to be done. Authentication and authorization. This is something that citizen developers usually don't care about, but they should. And this is where IT needs to jump in and to enable authentication, authorization, and of course permissions on that app. Who can actually use that data from that app, and how do people need to log in? What kind of login needs to be done? What kind of credentials needs to be passed? And who can do actually what with that app? Follow standards and guidelines. Here we have as well this no rogue data sources. So forget Excel and Dropbox. We don't. It's a policy for not using rogue data sources. Don't do data islands. So let's say even if you don't use rogue data sources, let's say Access database will be a data source which is not rogue, but which would also mean a data island. So don't use data islands which are definitely not easily manageable and governable later. Make it manageable, make it that it can grow, that it can scale, that it can work, and organize support. A very big thing, when hundreds of users start to work with an app, you will need to have some kind of support, even if it's a basic support line. Apply operational governance, IT governance. One is really data protection. The data cannot be stolen, the data cannot be broken. Backup and restore. Data recovery. If something really changes, we need to recover data from last week, whatever. And similar operational governance things which we need to do. The same will be with app and app code, of course, that would also fall into this category. The next will be applying the data governance. That means creating, using enterprise-ready data sources versus rogue data sources, including this in general data management. There are usually policies in corporations about how this data should be managed, how the data should be organized. So this data from this citizen app should also be included in the same data management plans, and the same procedures have to be applied also for this. Trackable changes. So if something does something on the data, that also needs to be, if required, that also needs to be tracked down to see what's that. Data rollback and very important data ownership. So even if a citizen developer has created an app which works with the data, it still, she or he is usually still not yet the owner of the data. So data ownership needs to be taken over by the IT department. And then when the data ownership is once in the IT department, then we can really apply the rest of the data governance. The next one is the compliance and risk. It's basically a no-brainer one. It's you need to help developers to inform policies, which you have there. It's risk mitigation, and although we are speaking about things like privacy protection, like personal data, like what is allowed, what is not allowed, you will probably at some point of time, especially with cloud applications, want to include some other people from the organization, including like work councils or some other stakeholders, to see if this is actually okay and according to the general policies we have in our company, which are not necessarily IT companies. I've met during my business life a lot of companies in Germany which were where it was not allowed to upload employee pictures of any kind. We had a lot of SharePoint projects where we needed like to delete pictures from the user profiles, but all modern cloud software somehow invites you when you create an account to upload your picture. So those are the things like the IT department needs to help to citizen developers to tell them, hey, this is not going to work because of that and that, and we need to change this in that way, so that your application would not be dumped by some higher instance because you uploaded pictures, which is not what is allowed with our company. So those are general and somewhat theoretical boundary of what we have been talking today. So let's see what's in SharePoint, because we are hearing from all the directions that the Power Apps are really easy. So what's the situation in SharePoint? First, SharePoint is good and enterprise-friendly data source. And this is one of the reasons why SharePoint is loved by the companies, why a lot of companies set on SharePoint, why SharePoint is an important part of the strategies of a lot of companies. And that's a good thing. That's where you want to start. But creating applications on SharePoint has from very beginning been a bit challenging, I would say. Everybody's darling for a lot of time, and with a lot of I would say solutions or apps being developed, it was InfoPath. It was for over 10 years recommended way to develop business applications, smaller scale business application SharePoint. So InfoPath is still there. It has been deprecated and then de-deprecated because Microsoft does not have anything to replace it actually in the meantime. But for you to know, InfoPath is not being actively developed anymore. So Microsoft published a large blog post telling people to slowly move away from InfoPath. InfoPath is going to be supported for the next 6-7 years, I think until 2024, I think it was the latest data we had. So InfoPath will be there for a few more years, but you will probably not want to set your new development on InfoPath because you know you are basically betting on a dead horse. It does have outdated, very outdated technology stack. So InfoPath is technology which was very popular in the beginning of 2000s. It's basically whole server side with different ActiveX and other things that are happening in the browser. So this is not something, how would you do applications right now in 2017? InfoPath does not have any kind of mobile story at all, and it is focused only on UI. InfoPath has some actions and validations inside the InfoPath. It's really very little business logic. What you can do with InfoPath, if you use SharePoint list in the background, you can of course combine InfoPath and SharePoint workflows to get some kind of business logic, but then your citizen developer would also need to be proficient in workflow, what a lot of them are. And but the one really strong argument for InfoPath and that was the code behind, basically writing C# code together with InfoPath apps, is deprecated in the meantime, since sandbox solutions are deprecated, and this InfoPath is how InfoPath does that as a sandbox solution, and they are even not deployable in SharePoint Online in Office 365 at all. Yeah, this is InfoPath story. It's still there. If you have InfoPath, you are okay, but think about replacing it in some short or middle time period, because this is not something that you want, and this is definitely not something that you want to base your new low-code development on. Microsoft recognized obviously early that InfoPath technologically is not the newest of the breed, so Microsoft tried to promote access services as other option for developing business apps on SharePoint, low-code apps on SharePoint. Access services are still there. The problem with access services is they store their data in separate SQL database. So your data is not in the standard SharePoint content database, they're in separate database. This invokes questions about data governance, data management, and whatever. And it actually never really took off. There were solutions there, but it was never as popular as, well, let's say, InfoPath or whatever. And we had things like reporting issues with reporting. Like you could have your business applications in SharePoint, but you would need to run reports through the Access client. And some more stuff like any other of more complex code would need to be run in the client. And that was this kind of mixture between web and rich client, which never made access services really take off. So basically, Microsoft tried the third step, something called Fossil, forms on SharePoint lists, but that never came into production. In our board as we have it today, this actually became deprecated even before it took off. So Microsoft was like, okay, we are canceling this thing. Since 2016, as we said, we had power-ups and flow from Microsoft, where Microsoft says it's not a replacement for InfoPath. It comes there, it fits in the story, but it cannot take, due to the feature set, it can never overtake the InfoPath's place. Because, okay, we saw that we have rogue data sources along the enterprise data sources, so when you make a power up, you are not actually forced to use SharePoint or any other sanctioned data source. And we actually have a very limited or even to no support for SharePoint on premises. It's very much a cloud service. SharePoint integration is anyway kind of shaky, yet there are no support for document libraries. It is generally available, but honestly still in very early stages. It's focused on the mobile story. You can really start fast, but then you cannot proceed fast. For example, you are limited later. You cannot make any master detail relations. You cannot make a complex business logic behind this. So it is there. It has its purpose, especially in the mobile story, but from the power, from the feature set, it does not come close to InfoPath or any of those services. And so what leaves us here is, and what Microsoft suggests now, it's to look at the third-party forms and business process management solutions on top of SharePoint. Problems with those are that they are very various in its nature. So there are a lot of good SharePoint form solutions on top of SharePoint, very various in its natures. We have form solutions from large BPM companies like Clintex, like K2, like Webcon, where they see the forms basically mainly as endpoints for their workflows. But this is not all what forms can do. We have Quizcom, Stratus Forms, and all the other forms solutions which are very different in the way how you build forms and how those forms are organized. Of course, there's a Skybow webinar, and I need to mention here Skybow Solution Studio Online, which is a solution which goes a bit away from the forms. Skybow Solution Studio Online actually offers the full end-to-end stack from data modeling to form designing, to business processes, to reporting. So there's the whole business stack around. So when you try to choose between InfoPath, between access services between Power Apps and Flow or third-party forms of third-party solutions. There are a lot of things to think about, and the comparison is not always easy. You really need to break down to the feature set. What do you need? What are your use cases? And how can those use cases, if those use cases can be supported by the form solution or any low-code solutions actually which you need there. So as a help, I put some kind of a matrix here for choice matrix, putting ones from a feature perspective in one slide, and from another side put it from the operational perspective to take care, just to look at some of those things. I put here InfoPath, Access Services, Power Apps and Flow, and skybow Solutions Studio Online. When we speak about data modeling, where you can create really your data, relations between your data, where you can visualize what's your master data, the slave data, the relations, the two systems, two platforms which enable you to do that are actually Access Services and skybow Solutions Studio Online, because InfoPath asks your citizen developers to bring their own data models through InfoPath data sources to the InfoPath forms. The similar is with Power Apps and Flow. Just Power Apps and Flow do it a bit on an easier way, offering you already predefined data sources. Problem with Power Apps and Flow that data modeling is not possible at all. So you cannot create any kind of relations in Power Apps and Flow. So it's a very one-dimensional data in Power Apps and in Flow. So this is if complex data is an issue for you, like master-slave relations or master multiple slaves or many-to-many, you would probably set for Access Services or for skybow Solutions Studio Online. All four of those technologies listed here have very good and advanced form designers, which are all four very different in its nature. We said, pardon me, InfoPath has an old ActiveX base with a designer. In the forms can be rendered in the web browser to the ActiveX control, and there is a special application, InfoPath client, for designing the forms. But yes, InfoPath can support very complex master detail forms. Very similar to Access Services, you will need Access, Microsoft Access, to create forms, but then you can really do complex forms also with Access Services. Power Apps and Flow have very easy form designer. You can do it either from Power Apps application for Windows 10, Power Apps for Windows 10, or from web service. But Power Apps cannot do any master-slave relations. It's always one-dimensional data. Skybow Solutions Studio Online is also fully client-side. It's only web browser-based, so there is no application that you need to install. And Skybow Solutions Studio Online can support master-slave, master-multiple-slave, and all what you need. Business processes, InfoPath does not have any. InfoPath has really basic validation of the fields and really basic calculations of the fields. Because InfoPath was never focused on this part of the story. For anything more complex, you would need to write code with InfoPath. And for some kind of business processes, you would need to pair InfoPath actually with workflow, with SharePoint workflows. Then it would be possible. But InfoPath itself does not have any business processes as such. Access Services does actually. Access Services have procedures and functions in Access. That means you can really write code in Access, but for triggering those procedures and functions and some complex things around this code, you would need to run your application then from Access client and not from web. That's the reason why it's here minus and plus in the same time. Power Apps and Flow. Power Apps have a decent expression language in Power Apps, and Flow itself is a business process feature. So this would be processes would be supported in Power Apps and Flow. Flow is even getting more and more decent actions and activities that you can start with Flow. It's very similar with Skybow Solutions Studio Online, where basically you can, after designing form, you can create action links and actions in the Skybow Solutions Studio Online to do all different things of data manipulations and data actions. and even things like automatic aggregation and stuff. From skybow Solution Studio Online, you can even trigger Microsoft workflows, SharePoint workflows, and soon probably also Microsoft flows. Code behind. Very often we see that there is a need when a citizen developer actually develops an app that some kind of complex process, more complex calculations or whatever needs to be then supplementally written by a developer. That in a way the developer fulfills that app. InfoPath could do that with C#. The problem is that's deprecated right now. But there is this possibility, just it's not going to work with SharePoint Online. This is not working anymore. Access services, as I said, it's possible. You could use VBA for this, but then again, you would need to run this from the client, not from the SharePoint web interface. Power Apps and Flow do not have any kind of advanced code writing story with it. Actually, even more, the proposed or suggested way for doing that in Power Apps and Flow is to write custom Azure functions and Azure API apps. And as soon as we start speaking about Azure functions and Azure API app, it's a hardcore full stack development, which then makes this story very, very complicated. With skybow Solution Studio Online, you can just simply write your you can use JavaScript to write your code behind. Very similar you could use with as you could use with InfoPath and C#. With skybow Solution Studio Online is JavaScript. Reporting. InfoPath did not have any reporting capabilities. Back in the time, it was suggested to rely on SharePoint on SQL Server reporting services as a third component in this InfoPath for reporting stack. But InfoPath itself does not have any reporting services. Access services, as I said, yes, they do, but then you need to run your solution from Access client and not from SharePoint web interface, which makes it much less appealing and interesting from that way. Power Apps and Flow do not have any reporting possibilities. They can include charts though in Power Apps, but this is charting and not full stack reporting. Skybow Solution Studio Online can include Power BI in the solution, and very soon the report generation is coming to Skybow Solution Studio Online as a native part of the Skybow Solution Studio Online stack. When we move from feature set to the operation set, then we speak about those 5 pillars that I was talking a few minutes ago. It's like security, standard guidelines, IT governance, data governance, and compliance and risk. When we speak about security, the best thing you can do is actually just follow the standard security guidelines, or even more concrete SharePoint security guidelines that you already have in place. And this is something what InfoPath and Skybow Solution Studio Online do very well because they rely on standard SharePoint stack. There is no additional security stack. Just SharePoint is being used for everything security. Access services do it differently because they have different content databases, and you need to basically to create security stack on your own. Power Apps and Flow at the moment have only Azure Active Directory authentication, but not fine-grained security permissions on any way. Standards and guidelines, as we said here, InfoPath does not do that anymore because technology is very outdated. Access services does follow most of the standards and guidelines, and this is why it's pass here. Power Apps and Flow also do, and the Skybow Solution Studio also does. When we speak about IT governance, about manageability of these applications, InfoPath and Skybow Solution Studio have the same advantage as they have with security. They actually rely on SharePoint. So whatever you do with your SharePoint IT governance, the same thing is going to happen with your low-code solutions when you have on top of it. Data governance is a tricky one. For all of you who have worked with InfoPath, you know that if you use InfoPath in a simple scenario just to customize list forms, you are fine. But as soon as you need a bit more, like masters, detailed relations, or more complex things, you would actually use something in SharePoint called Forms Library. And then your data is not anymore stored in SharePoint lists, but it's stored in XML files inside those forms libraries. And this is where data governance and later data mining or data usage becomes extremely complex with InfoPath. This is the reason why InfoPath and data governance is not really a best match. For the very same reason we have the access services, because access services uses separate SQL database, not standard content databases in SharePoint. So you need to maintain this data separately and to take separately care of the data. Power-ups and flow with things like common data model, which is basically not governable for you as a user or administrator, and with the rogue data sources like Dropbox or Google Drive, this is not something that we can really consider as manageable or data governable. Whereas skybow Solution Studio Online just simply uses SharePoint list libraries for data store. So basically, the same data governance you apply on your SharePoint will be automatically applied on any solution created with skybow Solution Studio Online. Compliance and risk, basically the same reasons like security and IT governance. skybow Solution Studio Online and InfoPath do rely on all the compliance and risk procedures you have in your SharePoint. So if you have a data archiving, if you have record management, if you have routing or document routing or whatever you have with your compliance stuff, it is going to be applied in your solutions with skybow Solutions Studio Online and with InfoPath. So that's the reason why if you stick only to SharePoint and if your platform for building low-code solutions really sticks to SharePoint, you will also stick to the risk and compliance requirements you might have. So we are now already 45 minutes in our webinar. So this is the time where I want to make a recap and to open the QA round. Is that first of all, low-code and no-code solutions. I basically, honestly, don't like using the word no-code solutions because this never happens. There's always a code written, and even low-code solutions are just frameworks which gives even non-professional citizen developers possibility to create something without being a full-stack developer. So low-code solutions are here to stay. They are not going to go away, and IT cannot ban them. IT should actually be there to work to them and to help them. Citizen developers are going to take their role in IT landscape. So this is going to remain, this is going to be with us. No real developer are not going to lose their jobs. So this is one of the popular myths. We don't need developers. Some of those myths are also encouraged by the clickbait articles like in Gartner or Forrester or Computer World. But no, we are still the world is still going to need the real developers for a very, very long time. If IT does not manage or guide low-code solutions, shadow IT is going to be the answer. So if the department does not want to play along or play with, the businesses are just going to skip them and to go to the shadow IT, because that's the easiest and the quickest thing they can do. So the cooperation between IT departments, businesses, and citizen developers is a must. It's something we all need to seek to and to get this sorted. We all play together and not against each other. SharePoint, for a SharePointer, SharePoint is an application platform. And since SharePoint is a platform, please choose your low-code platform accordingly. There are different ways, there are different possibilities. You can still set on InfoPath for access services, but this is not something which has great future. So it leaves you with Power Apps and Flow, which are very feature limited, at least for the moment, and a bunch of third-party solutions on top of SharePoint. So my message to you is that you need at least roughly to write down your requirements, and at least roughly to look at the offering of different third-party solutions and Power Apps, what can fit what, also which platform can or which technology can support which use case, and then to choose accordingly. There is no suggested way from Microsoft. This is very important to say. Power Apps and Flow have their place, will have their place, but Microsoft is very aware that it is not answer for even majority of requirements. So it's very important that this choice is actually being done by you. With that, I would like to 4 minutes behind the schedule, I would like to close the presentation and to thank you, and actually to open the question round which Matt is going to take. If there are any questions.
No, there are no questions. Seems that you explained everything pretty well, so seems to be...
Or that nobody actually bothered to ask.
Yeah, right. But no questions so far, but of course you can always ask later on by email or on our portal, wherever.
Yeah.
And of course we have a recording of this webinar.
Yes, as always.
Yeah.
We are going to be sending the recording to all registered. Oh, I think we got a question right now.
Oh yeah.
Can you please play this webinar on IT conference? I did not read. Matt, can you read the question since my screen is really small right now here?
I would like to thank you for the part that Shadow IT does exist. Please, can you play this webinar on IT conference? So,
well, I'm actually pretty often asked to make this very session different conferences. I was doing that last year a few times in Germany and in Netherlands and Slovenia. So this really is one of the topics because I have sometimes 2 hats. One as a developer and a software architect, and one talking to our partners and customers about what kind of business should be done. So this is the talk that I'm giving relatively regularly, and this time also as a webinar. And yes, we will also have a YouTube recording, so I hope that everybody who wants to see or who needs to see this can do that. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, so no more questions.
And I see people are leaving us slowly, which is okay. We are done for today. Thank you everybody for being with us, and as Matt said, we are going to send the recording around, and thanks for being at another skybow webinar.